The 90s had a lot of things going for themselves. They had the Back to the Future series. They had an arcade at every corner. The internet was this up and coming newfangled thing that everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And I feel like that's a bit of a scam because there's like a lot of things that are better than sliced bread. Like the VR set, for example. Think about it. You can isekai your way into a digital world where you can meet your waifu and husbando and you can live a great, what I like to call a digital vida loca. But with Apple releasing Vision Pro this year and VR headsets becoming a common household thing, I thought, why don't we go back and jack ourselves in, Code Lyoko style, into how it all started. And if you're like me, history probably isn't your forte, so you can't remember dates or things that happened in the past, so you probably have no idea when virtual reality was made or who even invented it. Like, someone can come up to us and tell us Kim Kardashian was the one that invented virtual reality, and because we don't know anything otherwise, we'd have to believe it, and then we'd have to do that awkward thing where we have to like pretend like we kind of saw that coming. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, I could see that. I could see that Kim Kardashian invented gyroscope and motion detecting. Like, yeah, I believe it. But given how the internet was made like, what, 40 years ago, then you would think that the idea of VR should fall somewhere around there. Well, if you thought that, you'd be dead wrong. Like, so dead wrong, like the people from the Oregon Trail, the video game that absolutely nobody knows how to play, and whatever you did, people just kept dying anyway because human nature, and that's what the game wants to teach you, people still die. And actually, VR was made in 1957. 1957? Wasn't that still the time where wagons were still being used and people were still traveling by horse? Surprisingly, no. 1950s was around the time that the modern computer was being invented. 1950s. We're not giving these people enough credit here. At least I'm not giving them. And that's probably due to the fact that I'm so disconnected from history. You know, from the point that dinosaurs ruled the world to where we are now, everything in between is pretty much a blur. You know, you could tell me that whenever Christopher Columbus discovered America, it was around the same time that Jersey Shore premiered, you know, and I would say that makes sense, you know? Christopher Columbus wanted to make a reality TV show centered around young, hot people and their daily life around the beach. Makes perfect sense. I could see that. But the VR during this time was not like the VR that we know today. It actually went by a different name. It was called the Sensorama. The best way that I can describe the Sensorama is that it's equivalent to that Disney ride where you sit in front of a huge screen TV and you plop your ass down on a chair, and the whole thing's supposed to simulate what it'd be like to be on a roller coaster ride. You know, because why would you wait in line to go to an actual roller coaster when you can just sit down and wait for a virtual roller coaster ride? That's pretty much what the Sensorama did. It showed you moving pictures, aka videos, of places like New York, Rome, England, Paris, and then you'll have like a random guy in the back of your seat making pigeon noises to make the experience that much more immersive, you know, to give you the feel like you're actually at these places. That's the whole thing that the Sensorama did. But it wasn't until 1968 that American computer scientist Ivan Sutherland and his student Bob Sproul took the Sensorama idea and made it into the VR headset that we know today, or what I like to call the Hantai-orama headset. Of course, they first invented it for the US military. Damn Americans. You know how it is. Tech's first gotta go through the US military before it can come to us common folk. Well, it wasn't until the crazy creative 90s that the military finally decided to release the VR sets to the public. Now, a lot of you, myself included, were probably surprised to find out that Apple was going to charge about $4K for their Apple Vision Pro. Now, I'm not an accountant here, but that's definitely more than $2. But shoot, my poor ass would probably still think that buying the Oculus Quest 2 for about $300 was still breaking the bank. But it's surprising to know that the VR sets that are being sold to the public in the 90s, those were actually going for a whopping $50 to $60K.
Controllers. This thing is sweet, keeping in mind the hefty price tag of $60,000.
Now, that's a lot of money. It's sad to say that that's more than what I make in a year before taxes. Like, that's one complete year, no gaps. And I still would have to work maybe a little bit more on the next year if I wanted to be able to afford one of these VR sets in the 90s. And if you think about it, it's actually pretty sweet, you know? They're letting the common folk have access to this totally cool, realistic, next-gen graphics, all for a small price of slaving away for a year or two. That's a great trade-off right there, but I know better and you know better because we both have our tinfoiled hats on, and the whole thing of letting the public buy VR headsets was more in the hopes of the arcades buying them, so that way younger people can get all hyped up about this new shiny type of technology that was totally going to change the gaming industry. And we actually wouldn't be too far from the mark, because when companies hear the phrase new technology, they often associate it with words like monopolize, capitalize, or even investment opportunities. So with these investment opportunities comes the birth of what I like to call the not so great, but they're definitely trying not to make it so horrible, VR games and technology. And surprisingly, but also not so surprisingly, Nintendo was one of those companies that really wanted to jump on this wagon. They're like, oh, gotta get myself into this VR headset, gonna make me a lot of money. So they ended up releasing a VR headset called Virtual Boy. Now, aesthetically, it's pretty nice. It's got some red and it's got some black. What more could you ask for? But if you ask me, personally, you put some flames and a skull on that bad boy, we'd be in business. Now, Virtual Boy wasn't doing so well, despite being aesthetically pleasing. And Virtual Boy just wasn't, as a lot of people say nowadays, he just wasn't giving. And that's true. He wasn't giving. He wasn't delivering what we all would have expected from virtual reality. And that's because Nintendo wanted to be a quirky girl 101, said, hey, let's not include motion tracking technology. And if you don't know what motion tracking technology, it's basically when the headset's able to track your head movement, you know, the big component of virtual reality. Because motion technology is the only difference between you having a VR headset or you having a TV plastered to your face. Now, for me, motion tracking is a big part of the VR experience. It's one of the biggest parts that makes the experience so immersive. But that's not to say that the sounds or the things you see can be shitty so long as the motion is really good. VR kind of needs you to be equally good or equally shitty in all three areas. It's just that you can't just focus on having the most amazing, most realistic graphics of a tiger to end up using cat noises in the background. It just ruins the entire experience. If anything, the bad experience completely overshadows whatever good things there are about the VR. At least for me it does, but I don't know, maybe there's some people out there that couldn't care less about any of those things so long as their blocky waifu has realistic breathing noises. Like if it's that easy for Nintendo just to make a VR headset during the time, I could have sold you guys 3 TVs, one on each side, and called it virtual reality. And apparently it would pass during that time because that apparently is virtual reality. And to make matters worse for Virtual Boy, to put another nail in the coffin, Nintendo was like, I need more money for other projects. So they decided to push out Virtual Boy unfinished. But guys, it's really not all that bad because Nintendo, they understand that not everybody's perfect. They're like, guys, look, I understand I messed up, all right? I didn't add the motion tracking technology that probably should have came with the VR. And maybe I did a little oopsie and sending out the product unfinished, but look, I'm thinking about you guys, okay? I understand that your necks could be really fragile after spending like 15 minutes of playing the game. So that's why every 15 minutes, we're gonna add a reminder that you go and you blink. And to help you with that heavy ass TV plastered on your face, we're gonna go ahead and throw in a standard. Free of charge. One personal standard so that way that huge TV doesn't weigh on that fragile neck of yours. Because we're thinking about you guys. We're honestly thinking about you guys. Now, one thing that I personally didn't like about the Virtual Boy is the fact that it required 6 AA batteries just to operate as a portable device. Now, you did have the option of being able to connect it to a wall, but it wasn't until a company named SVG and they ended up making what was called the Virtual I/O glasses, also known as input output, and also known in LGBT as the glory hole. And when Virtual Glasses released, they did pretty much everything that Virtual Boy couldn't do, with starters being that they gave out a colored display, because I also forgot to mention that Virtual Boy only gave out a red display. So imagine playing a red display for 12 hours straight. So luckily we had virtual glasses to alleviate that sort of pain that we had in playing Virtual Boy. Now we get a colored display. And another thing that made virtual glasses a little bit better than Virtual Boy is that it allowed us to be able to jack into like our favorite TVs, computers, I don't know, printers, maybe other virtual headsets. That's probably not true. That's a lie. I made that up. Don't believe me. Don't believe everything you see on the internet, okay? The biggest thing that made virtual glasses way better than Virtual Boy was that they included motion detecting technology. Oh my God, guys, we're living in the freaking future. But one of the things that actually sucked about the virtual glasses is that it wasn't portable. Like, you had to have shit with you in order to jack into shit, you know? And that wouldn't have been a problem. But the fact is that this company actually advertised it as portable. There's a video of a guy in one of their advertisements where he's at the dentist and he has his virtual glasses. You know, if it really is portable, you really think someone's going to be hauling around their desktop just to be able to play some PC games at your local McDonald's or something? Now, SGVA isn't the only company that's trying to get a slice of this got cake, okay? It's every company in the 90s that's trying to get in on this action, that's trying to get their own got cake, okay? There's a lot of got cakes everywhere, but they want the virtual got cake here. They want that. So another company by the name of Tigger Electronics, they were like, hey, you know what? We're gonna make our own virtual headset and we're gonna make it even better. Did they succeed? No, they didn't. They actually did horrible with their product called the Tigger R Zone. This headset had one small little square where it displayed everything. It's kind of equivalent to the Google Glasses, except less expensive, more shitty, and more depressing. This VR set kind of looked like a shitty cosplay of the Ganyu Force from Dragon Ball Z, you know? Their glasses at least look cooler, you know? They're a whole group. And this small device was advertising as virtual reality. And I think it's safe to say that it was far from it. The only positive thing about this device is that it sucked in all three areas that I talked about. The audio was horrible, the visuals were horrific, and there was no motion tracking technology. It just sucked in all three areas. It's like the companies in the 90s had almost no idea what virtual reality really was. And they were like, you know what? Let's just take the TV and make it smaller. Oh my gosh, so different. And hopefully by now you're probably asking the same question that I'm asking. Why did companies have such a bad view about what virtual reality was? All the companies did was just take everything that was computer operated, offered nothing newer aside from the motion technology, wrapped it up in a cute little different box, and then sold it like that. And the people in the 90s ate that shit up. And the thing that just sucks is that those companies that were selling those shitty VR techs, they weren't lying when they were selling us virtual realities. It's just, it wasn't the way that we had thought it was, the way that they were advertising it and the movies were showing it. They were showing it as if my whole body was just going to digitalize and be thrown into the virtual reality, or somehow my conscious mind was the thing that was getting uploaded into the virtual reality, you know? Is it really bad to have VRs be kind of like how the movie Arcade displayed it as? For those of you who haven't seen the movie Arcade, it's a really shitty 90s movie. I highly suggest that you don't watch this movie, because I spent about an hour and 30 minutes just flabbergasted about how slow the movie was. About an hour, it's just the main character girl trying to figure out what happened to her friends, because her friends ended up getting like trapped by an AI in a virtual reality. And the last 30 minutes is like them playing the game, and it's like a really horrible game. The main girl ends up saving them somehow. She's like not even a gamer. She just somehow is able to play the hardest game in this movie's universe, and she's like not even a gamer. I don't understand that, but okay, you know, girl power to you. But the funny thing is that this was the idea that the media was trying to sell to the common folk, that virtual reality was going to get to the point where we'd be able to digitalize our entire bodies or be able to upload our conscious mind into the internet. I mean, it didn't help that there was an amazing movie called Existenz that came around during this time that did an amazing, or I should say more than amazing, job at portraying the fears of virtual reality, getting to the point where everything is going to look incredibly realistic, that we weren't going to be able to tell the difference between between reality and virtual reality. But with all of that said, what are your guys' thoughts on virtual reality? Do you agree or disagree that virtual reality should get to the point where we can't tell the difference between reality and virtual reality? Or do you feel like, why the hell not, you know, because YOLO and technology should always be progressing? Let me know in the comments below. This is Stupid Takes. Goodbye and good night.